How do designers go about finding the right color combination for their designs? Picking the right color often has this "I know it when I see it" sort of feeling. But why does this logo look good here, but not so good here? And how does a designer go about picking just the right colors when they're designing something? First off, you can find a lot on the web about color theory. That's all good and fun, but for now, let's throw all that out the window. Don't get me wrong, color theory has its place in the design world, but we tend to place way too much emphasis on it, especially at the beginning of the design process. Picking out a color based solely on the emotion we may or may not associate with that color is really limiting, and it doesn't always hold true. All the logos here have red in them. Red is an aggressive and threatening color. Do these feel aggressive or threatening to you? Okay, this is probably a really bad example. But there are hundreds of red logos out there that don't have those kind of negative associations attached to them. When picking out a good set of colors to work with, the colors themselves have surprisingly little to do with how good they look. Hold up, I can explain. Most of the time, the contrast between colors is more important than the actual colors we pick out. Take this illustrated bottle of water. There isn't much contrast in the colors on this illustration. What does that mean? Let's desaturate this illustration. Let's take all the color out of it. See how the blue and the red are now a very similar shade of gray? That's contrast, or lack thereof. Now if we make this bottle of water a bottle of milk, can you see how much better that contrast is? We can see a clear, sharp line where the white really stands out against that pinkish red background. That's contrast. The yellow button and the logo on this site really stand out because they're surrounded by grays. They're also a slightly lighter color than some of the elements around them. So when we go back to our generic logo, if we want this to stand out more, we should lighten up the color. Or we could go the other way. We could darken the background color, so we make that a darker blue. Yellow, orange, blue, even bright pink. It's going to look fine because we have good contrast between all those colors. Why do we only print the McDonald's logo on a red background? Contrast. Otherwise, it's just too hard to see. Not only can contrast improve the colors that we pick out for our designs, but it's a great way to draw attention to the elements in a design. The higher the contrast, the more something's going to stand out. In this example, the element on the page your eye is most drawn to is the one with the most contrast. The elements with the lower contrast we process as being less important. Using less contrast or very slight contrast is an incredibly powerful design tool as well. Say we don't want to call a lot of attention to something, some elements on a page. Maybe we just want to show that, hey, these are three separate chunks. Darkening the background just a little bit in between, it does that. We darken it just enough so it's noticeable, that it says, hey, this is separate than the other elements on the page, but not enough to really call too much attention to it. One of my favorite design techniques is to use a very light gray background or off-white background and then put white boxes over it. This chunks up the content and says, we are a group of things and we belong together. There is a relationship between the elements in this box. But it does it without making it a focal point of the page. If we put a stroke around it or a drop shadow, then it would draw too much attention to itself. I like to take designs that I find on the web and desaturate them in Photoshop just to take a look at how the designs work. Some designers I know actually design in black and white and grayscale and then colorize afterwards. Once my design is set, I might go to a site like Cooler and pick out a design palette I like. From there, I'm probably going to tweak some of the colors anyway just to get the contrast the way I want it within my design. So, how do you do it? How do you choose colors for your designs? Let me know in the comments down below or hit me up on Twitter. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in a couple weeks.